So now it's up to Marçal. Marçal de Menezes Paredes is an associate professor at the School of Humanities at the Pontifícia Universidade Católica do Rio Grande do Sul. He has a major in social sciences and a master in history at PUC and a PhD in history at Coimbra University, Portugal. From 2019 to 2020, he was a visiting professor at the Department of History and visiting scholar at Harriet Tubman Institute for Africa and its diaspora, both at York University, Canada. He has been working with national identity and the nation-building process in Lusophone countries and the history of ideas and the intellectual history. He is a CNPq researcher. So, Marçal, you have the floor. Do you want me to upload your PowerPoint or can you manage?
Thank you, Bob. If you can do it for me, I would appreciate a lot. Okay, thank you. Ready? Yes, thank you, Camila. Thank you, Bob, for this opportunity to share some perspectives about the deep south of Brazil. I'm very happy to engage in this event with Danilo Contreras, and especially after this amazing presentation he shown us. My presentation has this title, and I need to explain it as good as I can. People who have no virtue end up slaving. This is a part of lyrics from a group of rap here in Rio Grande do Sul. Rafuage's group of rap here at city of Porto Alegre. And I am using this as a keynote, as a keystone, in order to show and to explain some characteristics about the social movement that is denouncing systemic racism within regional symbols here in southern Brazil, principally in Rio Grande do Sul, Porto Alegre. And the other side of the right side of my presentation, this first slide, is a picture of a senator in Brazilian history who was a great defensor of slave owners, and I will explain it and his participation of all the process in the late 19th century here in the end of my presentation. So I divided my presentation in 4 major steps. First, the Brazilian South, where I am, the brief localization, and the slavery historical backgrounds. The Ragamuffins War, or Farroupilha, Guerra dos Farrapos, Guerra dos Farroupilhas, as we say here, and the battle for its memory and significance. And the third step, systemic racism in Brazil, and the southern Brazilian case, particularly the case of Rio Grande do Sul. And the fourth step, the echoes of the Black Lives Matter movement here in the deep south of Brazil, in the southern Brazil. So I just need to present or to localize you guys where I am. Rio Grande do Sul is a very particular province in Brazil. We are very close to Uruguay and close to Argentina, countries which we share lots of elements of culture. But of course, we are part of Brazilian history, and all the colonial Brazilian history from the 16th century to the middle of the 19th century have strong ties with the slavery trade in the Atlantic Ocean, which completely tied our history to the Atlantic countries in Africa. So, of course, we share with all the Brazilian parts or regions the same history related to, deeply, strongly related to the slave trade. And why is it so important to highlight this? Because here, during the colonial times, and even after the independence of Brazil, the shark's plantation, or the dried and salted beef plantations, was the salted beef, dried beef was the main product of our regional economy and broadly used slaves. Pelotas, the most important city in this economy cycle, was known as a black purgatory. Climate circumstances as humidity and hard winter and poor conditions, for example, more than 14 hours of work a day, caused the shortest slave life expectancy in Brazil at the time, uh, less than 35 years, which is uh, incredible. Uh, and this is very important because in September 1835, here in Rio Grande do Sul, an elite insurgents upraised against the rise of dried and salted meat taxation, the shark's taxation. Cattle owners' interests mixed with Republican ideas in the absence of the king. At the time, Dom Pedro II was an infant, the Brazilian monarch, fostered a rebellion against the Brazilian central government. Even an independence republic, the Piratinese Republic, was proclaimed in 1836 and existed until 1845. Italian revolutionaries like Giuseppe Garibaldi and the Masonic connections are common aspects of the war history. Less remembered, however, were the Black Spearers Corps, which that I will talk a little bit more in the next slide. The Black Spearers Corps actually they were slaves who fought for their proper freedom, and they represented from 1/3 to half of the rebel soldiers at the time. The soldiers who fought for Piratinese Republic for the Ragamuffins War, the Guerra dos Farrapos. Facing internal conflicts and military decay, the Rags, the Ragamuffins leaders, started to negotiate a peace treaty in 1844 with Brazilian Empire. The promised liberty of the Black Spearers Corps and the maintenance of slavery in Brazil rapidly became an obstacle to reach a peace treaty. And this political deadlock started to be dissolved in the Porongos massacre, occurred in the 14 November 1844. And in this, particularly in this event, historical event, General Canabarro, a prominent rag leader, supposedly disarmed the Black Spearers Regiment the night before a battle where Imperial Brazilian troops dismayed the rebels. There are lots of historical and political arguments around this presumed treason made by rag leaders. And I am telling you this because the Ragamuffins War's memory and the Farroupilha, a Guerra dos Farroupilhas, structure our regional identity, structure our mythology, regional identity and its mythology. Here you can see some picture with people laughing, with a delicious barbecue and people sharing happiness. But we have to move besides these pictures to well understand how things work here, particularly related to racial inequality and structural racism. And that's precisely the thing I will highlight now in the next slide. In the 19th century, in Brazil, we had a huge wave of European migration. And this European migration had this closely connection with a kind of identity politics in order to whitening the Brazilian population in Brazilian national identity. But we must understand it more why it is so important. From 16th century to the middle of the 19th century, Brazil received more than 4,800,000 of Africans. In the early of 19th century, African descendants were more than half of the Rio Grande do Sul population. However, due to official racial politics, the country opened its frontiers to European migrants to foster a melting pot. And this building up of the mestizos here was conceived as a de-Africanization of Brazilian identity. From 1870s to 1930, Brazil received more than 3 million of European immigrants. As Silvio Romero said in 1888, Silvio Romero was an important intellectual, Brazilian intellectual, the mestizo was the win of whites. And in Rio Grande do Sul, this politics became a regional identity pattern, celebrating the gaúcho, our rural regional mestizo, and the European immigrant contribution. And of course, the consequence of it is the way they hide Afro-descendant contribution in the building of our regional identity. And I will show you a kind of examples. Here we have two big public festivals that celebrate. One of them, Oktoberfest, celebrates German immigration, and the other one is the Festa da Uva, which celebrates Italian immigrants, Italian immigration. So the thing is, this kind of celebrations function as an extra whitening process of regional symbols. And if you ask for other Brazilians in the north, on the northeast, and even in the southwest Brazilian big cities, the image that they have about Rio Grande do Sul's identity, Rio Grande do Sul building process of society and historical backgrounds, they don't know nothing about our African descendant contribution and how we as Brazilians have the same structural connections with the slave trade and the Africanization of our regional culture. This kind of public celebration functions, and I want to highlight this, a very strong extra whiteization of our regional identity. But of course, the Afro-descendant presence in Rio Grande do Sul is enormous, is huge and very important. One of them, of these great leaders, Afro-Gaúcho leaders, one of them is João Cândido, the master, the leader of the revolt of the Lash in the beginning of the 20th century. Other one is the Master Borel, a religious leader, important religious leader. The Oliveira Silveira, an important intellectual and poet. And of course, we have two great musicians, and I'm just giving you two examples. There are lots more. One of them is Giba Giba from Pelotas as well, in Rio Grande, cities from the south of Rio Grande do Sul, very close to Uruguay. And Giba Giba and his supapos drum, an important instrument that he defended and he highlighted the importance in order to underline the presence of Afro-descendant people here in Rio Grande do Sul. And of course, one of the great samba composer, Lupicínio Rodrigues, he is a Porto Alegrense. He was born in Porto Alegre. His action in our culture must be well known. But I really want to underline the presence of African memory here in public festivals, but a kind of public festivals that are not present in our official pattern or our official way to share to outside of Rio Grande do Sul our identity. And I'm talking about the Maçambique de Osório Festival, which is placed in Osório, a city close to Porto Alegre, the capital, and where is celebrated the marriage of the king of the Congo to Ginga, the queen of Dongui Matamba. So this kind of celebration, this kind of ritualized memory, ritualization of regional memory, must be introduced in our pattern of shared identity. I mean, to the rest of Brazil, of course, to the world. This is very important in order to crack the systemic racism in our identity. But in the same way as Danilo Contreras shown, the denouncing of the racism here and the denunciation of the Black invisibleness in Rio Grande do Sul did not started here nowadays with the Black Lives Movement connection. Actually, it started with the Unified Black Movement in 1978 that sparkled a process of rethinking national and regional symbols. In Rio Grande do Sul, historians started to criticize the mythology around the gaúcho, our rural symbol, and the official conservative symbols pattern of regional history. In the 21st century, particularly after the mandatory teaching of African and Afro-Brazilian culture promulgation in 2003, a robust re-evaluation of the national history restarted. But of course, the transnational links between the anti-racism movement worldwide refresh the regional's leader confidence and started a more muscular wave in order to denouncing the structural or the systemic racism here. I won't talk much more about this because I really want, I really think that it's very a kind of common sense and humongous and horrible case. But Black people death rate in Brazil is 2.5 times higher than non-Black death rate. So there's no other meaning to show this kind of structural violence closely tied with systemic racism. In systemic racism, we need to understand it in a more on a broad picture. Here I am showing you particularly the cases of the three of the deep south provinces in Brazil, the Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul. And here in Rio Grande do Sul, you can easily notice how Black people are more suffering more this systemic violence related to racism. And unfortunately, we have our George Floyd, and our George Floyd is João Alberto, and I'm showing you his picture. Unfortunately, he was assassinated for the private security forces in a very important supermarket here in Porto Alegre, and all of this was in February 2021. So all of these events, all of these horrible events are very recent, but they are not new. They just manifest a strong and deeply rooted structural racism in our society. This denunciation of the racism here started to focus on our regional anthem. And this is a very, very particular case of Rio Grande do Sul, here in the south of Brazil. You see a picture with a flag, is our flag, regional flag, and this flag was almost the same flag of the Ragamuffins Wars flag. And you, for those who understand Portuguese, easily notice that there are written "my country" below the regional flag. And our regional anthem was composed during the Ragamuffins War, but in its last version, it was consolidated only in the centenary of the Ragamuffins War in 1935. But in the regional anthem, it's written, and I'm quoting now, but it's not enough to be free, to be strong, aggressive, and angry. People who have no virtue end up being slaves. And this is important to understand what is written in our regional anthem, official anthem, and the changing and the challenge created to this lyric written by Rafuage's rap groups, Manifesto de Porongos. And in Rafuage's rap lyrics is written, but it's not enough to be free, to be strong, aggressive, and angry. People who have no virtue end up not being slave, but enslaving. And this changes completely the way they are challenging, or the way they are mobilizing our regional anthem. I am showing you as well in the left side of this slide a documentary film called Manifesto Porongos, again, who got important awards. And if you notice only the picture, you can understand how all of this cultural manifestation from the rap musics to the documentary films, how they are challenging our regional symbols, our public statues, and our name of streets as well. And I will show you a little bit more about this. It's important to underline a cultural event or cultural fact that existed that in this year, I mean 2021, by the Porto Alegre's city councillors who refused to stand for the regional anthem. You can see their pictures here, and particularly the city councillor Mateus Gomes, who is an historian. He are leading an important movement in order to at least try to crack down all the systemic racism symbolized in our identity pattern. On the other side, the right side of this slide, I am trying to focus in another movement, the racism street movement, that sparked a discussion about our monuments and street names. You can see in the middle of this slide, Canabarro's movement, the General Canabarro, one of the rag leaders from the Ragamuffins War. And in the right side of this slide, you can see the Cotegips Baron, actually a senator who was one of the great defensors of the slave owners in Brazil, and who fought for indemnization, monetary indemnization to for the slave owners in Brazil. And I'm meaning in the late 19th century, we had this kind of politics in our national politics. And the thing is, all these leaders, the city councilors, the racism street movement started to point out how and why in our city this kind of people must be or should be celebrated in street names or in monuments around the city. So I mean, it's a strict manifestation in order to connect the Black Lives Matter movement worldwide, around the world, and in our regional scale. Just to celebrate important leaders, and I'm just showing you 3 of them. There are lots of more important Black intellectuals, Black politicians here. I'm just want to underline the action of the prosecutor Jorge Terra in the Truth Commission about the slavery memory here, the anthropologist Oswaldir Carvalho Jr., who fought for the Black immaterial and material patrimony, and the historian Jorge Eusébio Assunção, who is one of the important leaders that criticize the place of the rag leaders in our official history here in Rio Grande do Sul. To finish my presentation, I really want to. I'm asking to Bob De Jong to share this video clip from Rafuage's rap music in order to give you some examples on how, or at least in the first or 1 or 2 minutes of this video clip, in order to exemplify this kind of things, and I'm try to share with you. I really want to thank the Groningen University and the Mexican and Latin American Center in Groningen University, as well Camila Sutherland and Bob De Jong for this amazing opportunity to share all these connections with the Black Lives Matter movement, and here the deep south of Brazil. Let me just say to everybody that the video clip is freely accessible on the YouTube. So yeah, if you have problems, so people can access this easily in YouTube.
Great.
Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Vim avisar, viemos cobrar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Vim avisar, viemos cobrar. Viemos cobrar. O curso do plano, a mudança do índice sem recuar. A denúncia é séria, impera a verdade, ratatatá. Na revolta infame que segue a contar, pode acreditar, Rafuage do Sul, e aviso que o mundo vai olhar pra cá. Sigo estudando, pensando, vivendo o que eu nunca vivi. Pensei que tão cedo não vinha, mas certo um dia esse rap tava pra sair. Sem espaço pros coniventes que nos excluem da história inteira. Sem tempo a perder, é por Oliveira Silveira. Povo que não tem virtude escraviza, manipula, humilha, não forma, se esquiva da verdadeira história que os tira da folha e da glória. Traidores com nomes de rua, vivendo até hoje com falsa memória. Mais verdade, menos mito, porque porongos dói na alma. Vocês querem calma, mas não os vejo muito dessa porra sentindo esse trauma que contribui num Brasil desumano. Leva pra bala mais um mano, igual lanceiros negros anos, onde o tiro não foi por engano. Desse povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Vim avisar, viemos cobrar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Povo que não tem virtude acaba por escravizar. Vim avisar, viemos cobrar.
They are amazing. And actually Hafuaji, Rafa Hafuaji, he has an important social movement to help people, poor people, to become better in their lives. So he's a great social leader as well. He is a great musician.